Welcome to the Irish Pagan School podcast. Your hosts are authors and co-founders of the Irish Pagan School here in County Waterford, Ireland, Laura O'Brien and Jon O'Sullivan. Fáilte.
Is it possible to follow both an Irish pagan path and a Buddhist path? Well, tag the agus fáilte. Hi, hello, and welcome. Jon O'Sullivan from the Irish Pagan School. And that is a quest or question that we have from one of our patrons over in Patreon. So to honour the effort, I'll read out the question there. About 6 months ago, Jon did a video titled, "Can you worship both Norse and Irish gods?" I really enjoyed that video and honestly need to rewatch it. My particular question is if you can follow an Irish pagan path while also following a Buddhist path. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate you asking the question. It is often, yeah, it really is great. I talk about it every time I come across a question. It's an opportunity to look at things from another person's perspective and to consider things from a different point of view. And what I will say at the top end of things, I don't know a lot about Buddhism. I know very limited information. I have kind of looked at kind of top end stuff, explored the idea of Buddha or various Buddhas and some of the core elements or core facets of that spiritual expression, but I'm in no way a person who can talk about Buddhism because I follow an Irish pagan path, and so I'm going to stay clearly within my lane. But it does go to that question really of mixed faith, mixed religions, mixed pantheon processes around one's personal spiritual path. So much like I discussed in the Norse pagan and Irish pagan circumstances, like the difference is that in Ireland, on the island of Ireland itself, there were a lot of Norse people who came here and lived here, not just raided here and took stuff away from here. Like we had Viking kingdoms in our medieval period and on. And so the belief in the association of Norse deities within the island of Ireland is something that can be looked at very squarely within our history and say, yes, that does make sense. Now, Buddhism, the growth of Buddhism, I think, from a European point of view, is again, I don't even have the history on this, so I probably should steer clear of it. But I do know that Buddhism comes from Central Asia, and it is an offshoot and expression of a particular form of spiritual practice. And I think the original lore and stories about Buddha was someone who overcame the pain and difficulty of the world by achieving a state of personal enlightenment through a process of personal sacrifice, education, growth in wisdom, and acceptance. And so, again, I really don't have a lot to say about Buddhism, but when it comes down to the structure and the integration of one's personal spiritual path, I don't think it's for any one individual to say that you can or you can't. There is no one true way to be a spiritual person or to explore your spiritual life. We talk about here from the Irish pagan perspective, you don't have to be Irish to believe in Irish gods. You don't have to be like from the island of Ireland to, engage with and to connect with and to honor and revere and worship Irish deities. What we do say to follow on with that, though, is, so please stay with me and hear this, is there's an ethical way to do so. There's an ethical way to respectfully approach native cultures, native teachers, and honor the understanding of where that spirituality comes from. Now, it's not always easy, and it does seem like a bit of a juxtaposition. I'm not saying I'm in one way. I'm saying there is no one true path, and everyone is free to explore spirituality in their own right. Yes, but also everyone has an onus and a responsibility within themselves to do so ethically and honorably within their practices. And so that's kind of where we get to one thing we teach at the Irish Pagan School, which is this concept of Coir Coibhneas, this right relationship. It is something that my partner Laura has put together in their work around their spiritual connection and building their relationship with the Morrigan over a long period of time. And so it is something that I have come to understand from their efforts and approach and adapt into my own spiritual processes as well, and encourage other people to do so. And by this idea of right relationship, It's not just viewing your connection to deity, but not even deity. It could be gods, guides, guardians, could be the ancestral people of your own lineage or your cultural ancestors, your community ancestors. It could be the energies of nature itself. It is about building a right relationship. And I'm not saying that it's right and wrong. I'm saying something that is correct, something that is true, something that is rooted in an honor and an association where the bond is just complete and correct in all of the right ways. And that's what we mean by right relationship. Now, we we teach this not because everyone has to do it our way or any other way. It's about trying to give people a tool set that whatever spiritual path they want to approach, they're doing it from a decolonized mindset. They're doing it from a point of view or a perspective of acknowledging deity or energy or anything where they are and where they come from, not trying to take it outside of its own culture and strip down those aspects because it makes it more packageable or acceptable for you in your own way. Um, and I don't mean you, I don't mean the person who has asked this question. I mean anyone and everyone who is listening to this video. Um, because it's not easy. Our personal spiritual growth is going to be a journey. It's going to be a journey that evolves and changes as we evolve and change, and it should evolve and change. It's very healthy for us to open our minds and our perspectives, challenge our preconceived ideals, and to look outside of a dogma or a religion that we may have been handed to by our parents, our culture, our ancestors, anything like that at all. The growth that people see when they explore their spiritual pathway from an authentic way, an authentic connection to themselves, and then to whichever enlightened masters, gods, guides, guardians, deities, energies, nature, the world. When someone approaches that from a sense of truth and true bond with the true relationship within themselves, they can. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm rambling around it, and it is because I've had such an experience myself when I found the Dagda in my life. And I have grown a lot in my own personal practice because I keep going back. I keep asking that question. I keep exploring everything I know. Where are my blind sides? Where are my biases? How can I learn more, do more, achieve more? Not because I need to be seen to do it, not because, I'm a better person or whatever. It's because I feel that that is the only way to be honourable and connected within myself for my spiritual path. Now, when we talk about Irish paganism is polytheistic. Has a belief in multiple deities, in multiple gods, guides, guardians, energies, entities, etc. And so it's perfectly natural and perfectly normal that one could expand your perceptions outside of your given culture or your spiritual practices to look at and integrate spiritual practices from other paths, other gods, guides, guardians, etc. So I wouldn't see that there's any inherent conflict or anything like that at all between associating those two paths. What I would say, though, is to be wary of the idea of pick and mix spirituality. So, what do I mean by pick and mix spirituality? It's the idea that a person can cherry pick aspects of divinity worship, deity worship, and connected spiritual practices devoid of their culture, devoid of their influences, devoid of the root information, education of the root native culture that it comes from, just because it fulfills some hunger within themselves. They walk in, it's like, oh, I'll have this God for this, I'll have this God for that, I'll have this God for this. And, it's like a pick and mix. It's walking into a store and deciding that, because you want it, you can have it and you can take it. And then that's part of your own personal syncretic blend of practices. That is something I see time and again, unfortunately, where people end up in a paddling pool of spirituality. They don't develop a deep and abiding, continuing relationship with deity or even with themselves around their spiritual path because they feel it's transactional. They feel that there's an entitlement to it. And this goes back to that decolonizing your mindset around your spirituality. Oh, well, this worked for me. I had this great experience in this meditation. I went and I had a meeting with Barry, who spent 5 weeks in Cambodia studying to be a yogi and taught me how to do X, Y, and Z. And now I'm not saying that those things don't have an impact. I've stood in various spiritual circumstances, workings, gatherings, and I have felt the energy work within those gatherings and within those workings long before I even identified as pagan. So there is a practice and there is stuff that can happen, but time and again, it really comes down to those who are willing to, as we also talk about at the school, put in the work, engage in a deep or this core quiveness, this right relationship, this truthful, honest, ethical deepening of spiritual connection that really leads to a proper level of, or a deeper level of spiritual fulfillment and empowerment within their life. So again, I'm an educator here. I'm here to provide perspective, to give insight, to teach practices. We have loads of information, loads of classes at the Irish Pagan School, specifically to guide people towards understanding and challenge their own misheld information and to get into it for themselves and to explore their spirituality as ethically and honorably as they can. That is what we do. That is the whole purpose of why we do it. But it is about being aware that the person who is coming and learning also has an onus of responsibility to be aware of their entitlement, check your bias at the door, make sure you're aware and take the time to question yourself. So look introspectively, which is another aspect of paganism, time for introspection, to challenge those kind of ideals that we may have been handed from our past, our cultures, any dogmatic circumstances of religious bias that may have been presented onto us. I have had conversations recently with people who are also educators in paganism and have found it quite frustrating and challenging that people are coming to polytheism and deity worship with a Christocentric mindset of entitlement. And it can be a bit very bothersome to try and help people grow beyond that. But that's why we do this. That's why we are educators around this, because we want people to have a deeper connection for themselves and to grow it for themselves. Because at the end of the day, you are responsible for your own spiritual hygiene. You're responsible for your own spiritual growth. And the more you can, and not just the person who asked this question, more anyone can challenge themselves to look beyond what they experience on a top level, to look for something deeper, to go deeper, to seek this core quiveness, this rightness of relationship. That is where really true transformations happen for people and spiritual growth can move to those next levels. But honor, honesty, ethical approaches, treating deities as, or divinities, ancestors, enlightened masters, anything it is, treating them with the respect they deserve and the cultures that they came from with the respect that they deserve means that you can be in proper balance within yourself and within your growth of your relationship and your spiritual path. Or not, because everyone has sovereignty, free choice, and will to choose as they choose to do. And all we can do as educators is to provide a perspective. And that is what this question has provided for me, an opportunity to speak to the perspective. I'm grateful that I'm seen as someone who can share information and insight on it. Thank you very, very much for asking the question. I really do appreciate it. So to round it back all on, the answer, not hard to say, I don't see any difficulty between a person approaching spiritual paganism, Irish paganism, or Buddhism as part of their spiritual path, as long as they're willing to do the work, get into it, and approach everything ethically and honorably as they go forward with their life. So, thank you very much for being with us here at the Irish Pagan School, and again, all of our patrons over in Patreon, where this question comes from. We've years, 2 years now, almost, worth of free resources available, irishpagan.school/free. Or if you would like me to answer a burning question that you have, we have a tier available over in Patreon for these particular questions there as well. Until next time, look after yourself, take care, and Salán. Goodbye.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a positive review in your podcast listener. Then head over to irishpaganschool.com and enroll in one of our free or paid courses. Slán go fóill, and we will see you next time.